Today's guest is Matt Farwell. He's a writer whose work has appeared in Rolling Stone, Playboy, and Men's Journal. He spent 5 years in the U.S. military, including 16 months in Afghanistan, and is the author of the book American Cipher, Bowe Bergdahl and the U.S. Tragedy in Afghanistan. This is an incredibly honest conversation about the military, politics, and war. You don't want to miss it. Today, on the Open Highway.
Hello, great minds! Mr. DGMH here, but wait, what the hell is DGMH? DGMH, or Drinks with Great Minds in History, is a weekly podcast that covers one of history's greatest minds each month, while we enjoy, review, and rate themed cocktails, liquors, and beers on the scale of greatness. As greats like Alexander Hamilton square off against George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, and more, DGMH is the perfect cocktail of history, sarcasm, and alcohol, with a twist of psych and a bunch of shots along the way. So grab yourself a drink with some great minds in history. Cheers!
Hey everybody, Eric here. I just wanted to take a moment and thank you for your continuing support for the Open Highway. And I have news for you. The Open Highway is now on Substack. That's right, head on over to Substack where we take a deeper dive into the news of the day, the topics that you hear on the show, or pretty much whatever I'm interested in. The link is in the show notes, so head on over and sign up, and now you can be part of the conversation. But most of all, thanks for listening.
The Open Highway with Eric Erickson.
You know,
Well, don't stare at the light then. Don't go into the light. Don't go into the light.
I don't know, man. I don't like, I know that makes me sound like a totally ungrateful shithead because like I'm on your show, right? And like you're nice enough to invite me on and it's via this way. And I'm like, fuck, I hate this medium. Like it's terrible. It's
dude,
weird
it's okay.
though, right? Like
Yeah.
you're used to it maybe. I've done, just for so people know, I've done like one of these throughout the pandemic. Like I've really avoided it.
No, I'll be straight with you. I don't think I did my first Zoom call until probably February or March. It was probably spring of last year before I did my first one.
Okay.
And that, so I wasn't a fan. I'm still not a fan, but
Yeah.
this is the only way I can do the show right now because I don't have Spotify money to fly you out to a studio quite yet.
No, that makes a lot of sense.
It's coming. It's coming.
Yeah.
But
Good. Are you with Spotify? Like, I also don't know any. We were introduced by our mutual friend Matt Ho, right?
Mhm.
And so, like, this is my introduction to you, and like, this is cool what you're doing, man. Like, I really admire it. Like, and it's hard. It's difficult what you're doing. Like,
it's not
people don't
easy.
see all this stuff behind.
Yeah, there's a learning curve. There's a definite learning curve. But once you figure it out, then you can kind of forget about the tech side of it and then really concentrate on the interviews and talking to people and the theme of the show. You know what I mean?
I mean, I sort of do, but I also I'm sort of scared of my laptop at this point. Like, this is my wife's laptop. My laptop is 10 years old. It's at my house across the street. And like, whenever I have to write, like I'm on deadline or something, or I have to put out one of those Tom Clancy's, I'm like, shit, I have to go like stand in front. It's like working myself up for a boxing match. I mean, I should probably like see a shrink about it or some shit, but like, or maybe it's like a natural human response to like this terrible condition, but it is what it is.
No, I think part of it might be writer's avoidance because I have the same thing sometimes. It's the 21st century version of the white open page. You all hear the stories about sitting down at the typewriter. You're like, ah.
No, it's true. I mean, but also I find like if I carry a stack of like, I have index cards, right? If I carry a stack of index cards around and I'm just like puttering around in the garden or like fucking around, like, doing this or that, I'll think of something and I'll write it down, put it in, boom, boom. And I can get a lot of writing done that way. But like you said, I sit in front of the computer and I'm like, oh,
It taunts you. It just taunts you. It stares
yeah,
at you.
and then I'm like, oh man, like, yeah. And then I also like, I went entirely insane, like into the mental hospital type insane, twice when I was living out in Silicon Valley. And I think part of it was because that place is fucking creepy, dude. Like San Francisco, Palo Alto, Mountain View, like it's real nice. It's beautiful. A lot of nice people there. Real creepy underlying, like, not to sound too woo-woo, but like vibes, man. Like it has bad vibes.
There's something different about up there. I've been up there, and I know what you mean. Some people they take to it. They like that corporate money tech,
Yeah,
but
yeah. But
I get it.
It's real Borg. Like, it's like
Borg.
like it freaks me out, man. Yeah.
But you're in Arkansas, right?
I am. Yeah.
How long have you been there?
What I have, so I've been here off and on since 20, and hold on, let me just put my coat away so it doesn't rust.
You're good. You're good.
I've been in Arkansas on and off since 2010.
Okay.
But I got out of the Army and was supposed to go back to the University of Virginia. And then on the 4th of July, a buddy of mine was in Albany with like a bottle of whiskey and a gun. And I was in Charlottesville with like a bottle of gin. And so I figured I should drive up there and help him out, right? Natural human response. But then I like broke my back when I hit a tree in Louisa County, compression fracture. And then I wound up like in the hospital. Obviously it was a DUI, which don't drink and drive, kids. It's bad. And like, you can break your back. I didn't hurt anybody. That's good.
Good.
I don't drink anymore. Like, but wound up like in a hospital in Virginia, in Charlottesville, strapped to a backboard because I was having abdominal seizures because they gave me Haldol like when I came in because I can't like, it's hard for me to pee if like people are looking at me. This is a common problem, right?
Yeah, I get it.
Yeah, I go into the stall if I'm at like a bathroom at Walmart, right? Like, I pee in the stall. That's fine. Yeah. And so when you're in an overcrowded emergency room on a 4th of July Saturday night in Charlottesville, Virginia, or 4th of July, it wasn't a Saturday, but whatever day it was in Charlottesville, Virginia, and you're in the hall, half drunk, strapped to a stretcher, and and you got to pee, and they give you one of those like bedpans. I can't pee in that, but what I can do is hop off that stretcher and go find a bathroom, and then hop back on, and then get lippy with the nurse when she tells me that I shouldn't have done that, and then she gives me a Haldol injection because I'm an unruly patient, and then I wind up having an allergy to it. Anyways, like listening to Walker, Texas Ranger, like writhing, unable to see it, just hearing like the Chuck Norris dialogue, not even able to see like the glorious roundhouse kicks, Oh,
classics.
So that was so that I wound up back here in Arkansas, and then I would like try and jet out, and I would go to either New York or San Francisco, and I'd be there for a little while, or Charlottesville, be there for a little while, and then I'd like fall apart, go insane, come back here. My parents lived here. And then in 2014, I was like, what if I just like didn't try to leave Arkansas and just tried to like not be so crazy? And I got a stellate ganglion block in my neck for PTSD that I wrote about for Playboy magazine. It's no longer on the web because Playboy like scrubbed all their stuff, but it was in the one non-nude issue of Playboy. If anyone has that, or I can say
nobody has that issue.
It was a good issue.
There was but come on, there was. I remember when that came out. We were like, really?
Yeah. No, it was. I mean, it was like I feel like I'm kind of like the magazine. Like, my wife would probably tell me not to say this, but like I'm like the Grim Reaper for magazines. Because I went to work for like Rolling Stone, right? And then like they died, and then I did some work for Playboy, and then they died. So like I hope the New Republic is solid because I've done some work for them.
Oh God, now you're on my show. I'm toast.
No, I know. That's why I like, and how do you say that to somebody? You know, you're like, listen, here's the deal. I am become death, destroyer of like media products.
They're gonna hire you as like subterfuge. They're gonna hire you and then send you to other magazines to see if you can take them down. Corporate espionage.
I mean, listen, at this point, if any hedge fund managers are watching, I'm entirely open to that. Go for it.
Hey.
Like, I'm going to need a healthy retirement package in a high altitude area. That's it. Yeah. Let's go. That's fine.
What came first though? What came first? The military or the writing?
I mean, that's actually a weird thing to unpack, right? Because I'm a military brat too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, your dad was in Turkey, was stationed in Turkey at one point. Mm.
Yeah, that was he was in the Air Force Reserves when I was born in Utah in 1983, and then right after like those bombings that they talked about on Netflix, the like Hoffman bombings, my dad was like, what if we left here? What if I just went back in the Air Force? And we went to Turkey. And so I was a 6-year-old kid when we moved to Turkey, and that was 89. So we were there for like the first Gulf War, and Dev Sol, which was a revolutionary leftist Turkish outfit, like Marxist liberation outfit. It's, I mean, with a sick name, Dev Sol, right? Like,
yeah.
They were operating in the area. Like I heard bombs go off there. So we just didn't get away from bombs. We just moved, you know, like Utah bombs, Turkey bombs. And then, so that whole time, I mean, even as a little kid, like I've got shit over in my baby book that my mom saved because she's awesome and like saved all that stuff and put it together. Where I was writing like letters and that there. So they're kind of inseparable.
Okay.
Know?
So
but they also, publishing wise, I wrote when I was in Afghanistan, I wrote kind of like a nastygram back to my college classmates, like via the like, you know, alternative newspaper on campus or whatever, the Declaration at the University of Virginia. And somebody in Colorado saw it and was like, hey, I liked your essay about like, you know, how stressed out you were in college and like how stressed out you are in Afghanistan kind of thing. And would like to republish that. And so I wrote out and did that like while I was in Afghanistan. So I got my first thing published while I was in the military and in Afghanistan, which was kind of weird, like writing on, you know, MRE boxes on the back and then like coming back to the computer lab and typing them up.
And there was the military didn't have a problem with you writing while you were active? What was the piece about? The first piece?
It was called Welcome to Afghanistan, and it's on the internet. If anyone is really like that bored. But it was me kind of like doing a narrative about my last year at college and then like just the kind of day in the life out in Afghanistan.
Okay.
Yeah, and I mean, whatever, it was fine. Like there's shit. Like I go back and, you know, you look at anything you wrote like 15 years ago or 14 years ago, I'm bad at math. And you're like, well, that kind of sucks. Like shit. You know, but
I don't even have to go that far back. There's times I go back a couple months and I'm like, oh God, what was that?
No, it's brutal, man. It's brutal. Mankind was never meant to write. Like literacy was a mistake. You know?
Throw your own profession under the bus, man.
I mean, it's kind of my one natural talent. Yeah.
Do you enjoy it? Do you enjoy writing? Or is it cathartic? Like,
no, it used to be. I mean, I did probably like the majority of my writing, and I would say like the majority of my learning, like, you know, like if I'm learning how to do woodworking now. And so, you know, you kind of like learn on stupid, rough shit and like making mistakes, doing easy stuff. And then you do harder stuff. And so that, after the war, I went to work for down at Fort Monroe, Virginia, which is now decommissioned, but it used to be like one of the oldest forts in America. It was haunted by Lincoln's ghost. Lincoln's ghost like haunted a building there. Robert E. Lee had helped build it. Jefferson Davis had been imprisoned there. It was a cool place, man. It's like, if you're ever down in Virginia, in coastal Virginia, like on your way to Virginia Beach, pull off and see it. It's cool as shit. But
it's a weird mojo though, like the ghost of Lincoln and Robert E. Lee.
And I was living there in the barracks as the only like infantry dude, because basically I thought I was going to get stop loss. I'd signed up for a 3-year hitch, you know, doing the like, well, I won't be in college anymore because college sucks. Like, I'll go to war. That would be cool. It wasn't. But like, so I was doing this, and I was like, fuck, man, I got hooked up with a job there. I was the only infantry dude there. Most of the people were generals, and like where I lived was in the MP station that was right at the front. Like that was also where the barracks were. Mm-hmm. So it was MPs who were military policemen who were like pieces of shit, like just generally, no offense. I mean, actually, yeah, some offense meant to all you MPs out there. Like, why would you have to be an MP? Come on, guys. Like,
my uncle was an MP in Vietnam.
On other soldiers, what's wrong with you? And I'll say this all day, but like, also, I served with some good MPs, so you know that should save me next time I'm on base. There are good MPs, and you, the MP watching this, don't be mad. You're one of the good ones, I'm sure. And right,
all of you. Like I said, my uncle was an MP.
That creepy? Dude, are you not supposed to like point at the camera on a Zoom call?
That's what's fun about. Well, it's what's fun about podcasts. We can do whatever the fuck we want, and it's like, you know, I could yell out anything. But
yeah. So I was there, and like was basically like I was miserable. My PTSD was like just starting to kind of peak. I was still drinking. I was smoking a lot, and the army had like really. They prescribed me like a lot of amphetamines. I mean, I have some very severe ADHD that apparently is true. Like it's, I guess, a thing. And so, but they were giving me way too many drugs. You know, just so like, I would stay up all night and like, just crank out like shit on my computer, you know? And I have a about 120-page file that's just like Afghanistan notes, you know, compiled. I wrote this like shitty novel about like two veterans that were walking through New York City, like it was Dante's Inferno, you know, but like modern day. I just did a lot. None of that stuff will ever see the light of day because it was fucking terrible. But like it was, you know, it's that stuff you got to do before you get sort of better at it.
You got to get it out of your head because otherwise it just rattles around. You got to kind of like empty it out so other things can be in there.
Yeah. Yeah,
you know?
and I mean, you just got to get the muscle memory of like what works, what doesn't, you know, what would sound cool, what would, you know, what wouldn't, what people, and like, I think, I mean, when I was younger, I didn't really think this way, but it's kind of like, it's a big thing to ask somebody to read something, you know, like to be like, hey, read this. It's a bigger thing to like charge people to read something, right? Or to like be like charging and. So, because that's like their time, you know, a lot of what people write is shitty and like boring, and a lot of what I write is shitty and boring, you know, like no one's immune from that. And so, yeah, I don't know. That was how I got started writing.
What was your assignment when you were infantry?
Yeah, I was in 11 Bravo infantry.
What was so were you doing patrols or what was your general assignment over there?
I mean, it would be, our mission briefs would say that we were to, you know, promote, my platoon leader was from Queens. So promote the governance of the Islamic Republic of Afghanistan, you know, like, and ensure, basically we like drove around until people shot at us or like tried to blow us up and then we killed them. And then, also we sometimes distributed like food and like humanitarian aid, and we tried to get like villagers to tell us like who the Taliban were, and they're like, no. You know,
I've heard that before. Like, I wish that was the first time anyone ever said that, but that's not.
Like, dude, just think of it this way though. Like, imagine all of a sudden, like, you know, there's like a like North Korea takes over West Virginia, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, how well are the North Korean soldiers going to do, like going up those hollers?
Mm.
You know, I mean, and the part of Afghanistan I was in, it really fucked me up. Like couple years ago when I went out to like the part of Idaho my family is from. I was born in Utah. My family's from Idaho, and I drove up to like where the farm my dad grew up in, kind of on the mountains, like a dry farm, rough, depression era thing. And it looked exactly like Paktika province. Like it looked so much like Afghanistan. And then my interpreters who are over here now, 3 of them, all brothers from the same village in Orkney. And I'm writing about them. That's what I'm procrastinating on right now, actually.
Glad to help.
Yeah. Like Tashakur.
Writer brother right there.
Solid,
whatever I can do to help.
Yeah. But they've driven through there a couple of times. Bear, stop itching yourself, dude. It doesn't do you any good. Seriously. Okay. That's my dog.
I really was hoping that. Yeah.
It's my stepdaughter's dog. And so I asked my interpreters, I was like, hey, what is that? They're truck drivers. So they go through, they're like, Southern Idaho looks like Paktika. I'm like, yeah, I know. It's weird, man. So it occurred to me that like, basically when I was in Afghanistan, we were right on the border in Paktika province on the border with Pakistan, right? And so in a land like filled with religious fundamentalists and smugglers who were also like kind of hard scrabble farmers, like, why did I go to Afghanistan? I could have stayed in Idaho and like shot at like people around my uncle's farms, like it's the same, because this almost the same vibe too, right? Because Idaho, Utah that area is heavily like Mormon dominated, right? I grew up Mormon. And just the vast similarities in the whole like enterprise were like really kind of striking to me, and like, I guess that's what we were doing in that area, like against the American Indians in like after the Civil War. Like it was the exact same thing we were doing in Afghanistan.
It's implementing your own belief system on another group, sometimes violently, sometimes not. I mean, you're trying to go in and say, this is the way we see the world. Why don't you see the world the same way? Right.
Yeah. And being frustrated. Like, I mean, the how many so-called like liberal progressive Americans were like frustrated that like people in Afghanistan didn't want to live exactly the way that people in America lived.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's really fucking arrogant, man. Like people in Afghanistan have lived there for a long, long time.
Mm-hmm.
They've kicked out everyone that's ever tried to take it over. Like I don't know that it's like really my place to like be like, hey, what if you farmed wheat? Like what if you farmed GMO wheat using Roundup? Like, wouldn't that be great?
Monsanto will come over and help you with everything.
Well, yeah, and Monsanto, which is now merged with Bayer. So IG Farben is like right back in operation in America. I mean, like IG Farben, the Nazi chemical conglomerate, right, was broken into 4 companies post World War II. Bayer, BASF, some other shit, and another one. I can figure it out. And then their headquarters was taken over by Supreme Headquarters Allied Command, which like always seemed like bad optics to me. But fuck do I know?
When you went over there initially, did you have a different perspective? Like, were you more optimistic? Were you kind of like, I'm going to go over and bring freedom and justice and all of that? What was your mindset?
I don't know that I was ever like that. I thought I was going to go over there and like get in like fights, like shoot at people and like get shot at. Right. Cause I went over there as like an infantry dude. I did like, I don't know, maybe if I'd like bit off harder on the shit, I would have been a State Department dude or like an officer or something. But no, I didn't really have those kind of like I'm going to help make these people better stuff. And that might have been just because, like, when I was 6 years old, we were rolling around like the countryside in Turkey. That parts of that weren't that different than the countryside in Afghanistan I was rolling around in, right? Like, fairly like rural opium farmers.
Oh,
right?
There's no opium in Afghanistan. I don't know what you're talking about.
It was absolutely not a drug war.
I don't know what you're talking. Matt and I talked about that a lot. Matt Ho and I talked about that a lot.
Yeah, I mean, it's so weird how like, isn't it weird how we like got a heroin epidemic like right after that? Then we got a synthetic version that like got people, geez, it's all so coincidental. It's cool.
Absolutely. So is it more of an adventure for you? Is that accurate?
I think more of an adventure. And if I'm being honest, it was an opportunity to die. Like I was kind of a wreck, I think, like just kind of a head case, a little bit, and pretty intense. Like I said, I'd grown up Mormon. I didn't believe in it. I didn't really like it. I went to this weird Illuminati like boarding school in New Mexico called the United World College of the American West when I was in 11th grade. I got like a scholarship to go there from Virginia. And I say Illuminati half in jest, but it does. It's a feeder school to the World Bank. Who knew? And it was
there's a lot. I worked in New Mexico. People don't realize there's a lot of organizations down there.
So I went to that school in Montezuma.
Okay, I used to cover NIMI.
Okay. Oh yeah, not NIMI. No.
Right. I'm just saying there's a lot of organizations in New Mexico. There's what was the name of there's a law enforcement school in Roswell as well that teaches the law enforcement officials from around the world. Yeah, it's very secret. It's on the airbase.
People don't realize all the Department of Energy does.
We used to blow shit up at Los Alamos. I covered that as a reporter. Yes. I have footage somewhere of plastiques of us blowing up cars.
You have no idea how. Wait, like you were a New Mexico reporter?
Yeah, I was a reporter for the Roswell Daily Record for a while.
That's fucking awesome, dude. Oh no shit, really?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Wait, I gotta ask that. Have you ever been to Farwell, Texas?
No. I've driven through Texas a few times, but I don't remember going to Farwell.
It's a tiny town outside of Clovis.
Okay. If I did, it was only driving through.
Okay. Now we'll have to go on an open highway. We'll have to go on a road trip at some point. And
is it named after your family? Is that what you're gonna?
They're elements, parts of my family.
Okay. Yeah. I get that because there's a town in Washington that's their streets are all named after my family. So it's a weird kind of thing when you show up and you're like, oh shit.
It's a weird name, and it's a weird. Farwell's not like a super. I don't see that name a lot, like you see it occasionally, but it's not like it was like Smith or something, like. So I thought that was kind of neat. Like there's a town in Texas, cool. I wonder if I moved there, if I'd get shit or like if like I'd be like a king, I don't know.
Maybe you at least get a key to the city, I would think. I mean, they give those things away pretty easily, so everybody needs a key.
Key to the city.
You got to keep writing.
I don't think the way I write is the way to get a key to any city.
Okay,
man.
but wait, let's hit that. So I watched an interview with you on CNN.
Yeah.
And you were talking about the press corps in Afghanistan, and it really jumped out at me. As long as we're talking about writing, you talked about how the press corps wasn't getting the story because they were all at the breakfast buffet eating omelets, and they weren't getting out. And it reminded me of that Tina Fey movie, Whiskey Tango Foxtrot.
Oh yeah, which was a novel, which was actually one of the I wrote a book about Afghanistan, and it was all right. Let me hear. I just happen to have a copy.
American Cipher, which is the links in the show notes. So everybody go check this one out.
My wife also wrote a book. It's not about Afghanistan, but I highly recommend it. Okay. And that was one of the few like good books that I've read about Whiskey Tango Foxtrot. And I mean, look, dude, I'm ostensibly like, I guess in the media, or at least like enough on the fringes, like, they still let me write for them every once in a while. But I mean, dude, it's not like it's it's what watching the people in like the imperial court in Rome that were like jockeying for position must have been like, or like, you know, like these are not serious people. They're not like really interested in the truth or like actually getting to like the bottom of shit, because ultimately they have a hard time doing it, right? Like it was really weird how ABC just didn't report on anything that reflected badly on Jeffrey Epstein, probably. Oh, because like one of their cruise lines used to like visit Little St. James Island.
It's interesting, isn't it?
Weird how that worked. Oh, and speaking of New Mexico, yeah, I mean, like, isn't it weird how like right between Santa Fe, where they're like many national security sites, and Albuquerque, where there are many national security sites, there was like a huge like eugenic sex trafficking operation going on, like just right in the middle of that, and no one knew.
There's so much that goes on in New Mexico, but I think part of it is, so as a former beat reporter, you do get access, and you think, oh well, now I'm getting access, I'm going to get the story. But then you start to learn. I learned this when I was in Chicago. The police department especially would give you access, and you felt special because you're like, oh, I'm in with the cops, I'm training, I'm doing this and that. And then suddenly kind of one day you look around and you realize you're not having access, you're being handled, and you're being shown this and that and this and that. And you talked about that in the interview, that, and that's what really jumped out at me, was the reporters are embedded with the troops, and they're like, I'm getting the frontline story, I'm going to show what it's like to be a grunt, I'm going to show like the violence. No, if you happen to get in a firefight, half the time they tell you get your fucking head down and get behind the barricade or whatever you're doing, or they limit what you're seeing, or they're going to send you out with a patrol that they kind of know what the patrol is going out and doing. They're not going to send you out in a situation where it's dangerous, or you're going to see something,
Can I
or
tell
you're
you
going to see a dam getting blown up or something.
Can I tell you a really awkward story right here?
Do it.
Okay, so a woman that I like and has been very nice to me, and has you know, like I've never had a bad interaction with her, and she's always been very kind to me. Kim Dozier, who was a reporter in Iraq, got blown up out on a patrol, right? And she got a traumatic brain injury from it, you know, had a hard time, wrote a book about it, still writing. I was in the PTSD summer camp, like the men's trauma recovery program that they do at Menlo Park VA psychiatric campus, which is also the place where the CIA fed Ken Kesey a bunch of acid, and he saw Chief Bromden.
Was that where that was? I love how you like, oh, by the way.
Oh, by the way, yeah,
I love it.
Tell anybody. I gotta hide the facts from my dog. He doesn't need to know what a dark place America is.
Keep him innocent. Keep him innocent.
Yeah, be happy. What was I saying about fucking?
You were talking about Kim. You were talking about Kim getting injured while you were in Menlo.
So while I was out there, one of the dudes that was in the program with me got blown up in that convoy too, and he hated Kim Dozier, hated her. It was like, and it was one of those things where I was like, wow, this is a really like, because I knew her by the time I was in there, you know, and I was like, this is a real fucked up, like weird meta moment. Like I'm at a mental hospital, like with a guy who's talking about like when he got fucked up, which was also a time this other person I knew, she got fucked up. She got a lot of attention for it, you know, and like a lot of like people rally to her side. He's just a bubba, you know, and like he's kind of here. And that also, like the media really liked inserting themselves as the heroes within those stories, or the heroes of those stories, you know, like Anderson Cooper with like, you know, kind of a tight t-shirt, because he's been working out, man, and like he does it well, you know, he looks good. But like how useful is that really? Like, really? Does that I grew up, when Turkey, my first exposure to cable news was CNN, watching like as bombs went into Baghdad while we were living in Turkey, and they were like, schools closed today because they're terrorist threats, like, and so for the last 2 or 3 years, I've really been avoiding watching any sort of television news, except, when you can't avoid it, like you're at a hotel and like, you flip it. And then I watch it more as spectacle. And I really think that shit's bad for people. Like, I think it's bad overall. I don't think it's a benefit to society. I think like they pretend like it is, but it's just like pressured speech propaganda that like gives everyone like heart palpitations.
What do you think about the tribalism part of it? The way that it kind of separates everybody into their little echo chambers of like, I'm going to listen or watch something that I agree with. I'm not going to challenge myself with new ideas.
I mean, I think it's almost more insidious than that too, because it also is not just like, I mean, I don't give a shit what somebody like think. Like, I have my own particular religious beliefs. Like, I don't care what other people's religious beliefs are, like, like, and some of them might strike me as strange. Some people's mine might strike them as strange, right? Like, but the idea that I would then have to say, like, because I think this, you're a piece of shit for thinking that,
God, that's where we've gotten, isn't it? That's literally where we've gotten.
Dude, it's gotten really fucking deranged, man. Like people on the TV using terms like traitor. I mean, I noticed this with the Bowe Bergdahl stuff. It started then. There's a lot of stuff that really got like, Bergdahl was kind of the canary in the coal mine for some of it, but like, I mean, like, a traitor is a very specific definition of the Constitution, by the way. Like, there's it's a pretty high standard. Like,
I was listening to something about like, that's an interesting thing you bring up, because they're dealing with the January 6th charges now, and they have to prove sedition. And I was listening to a legal expert, and they're like, that is one of the most difficult things to prove.
Yeah. Like, I mean, well, and again, who's been leading the charge in using specifically like loaded terms with all of this? Because look, I've spent a lot of time up around the Capitol I have friends that are in Congress. I have friends that are like on congressional staffs. I don't particularly care for DC, but I understand that, like,
I can't stand that place.
It's
like, no, don't you just want to take a shower when you leave? You're just like, oh God, it feels so gross.
I guess I would say, like, I like DC. I don't like official Washington, right? Like, man, I can go like kick it, like that's cool. But like the moment I gotta like hang out with some like Adderalled up psycho from Georgetown, like, fuck that, dude. No thanks, like, I'm good, man. Like, I don't care who you're the special assistant to. Like, I'm also trying to get a coffee. Like, go fuck yourself.
It's like Hollywood almost. It's almost like this, like, whoa, well, I work for Robert De Niro. Oh, well, I work for the the Joint Chiefs. It's this bizarre like build up.
The worst thing you can do there is not care about any of that, right? Like,
oh, they hate that.
But it's also like, it's been the funniest, it's the weirdest shit too about watching this current, like the current political climate, is like a lot of these people that are now like real players in the Biden administration were like, like third string, like JVers that were dealing with like dipshits like me in 2014, right? So like the State Department dude, spokesperson, Ned Price. I know Ned. I've known Ned since he was the guy that CIA was sending to try and handle me when I was still writing with Michael Hastings, right? And I used to call him Nedward. One of the times I went crazy, I wrote him like a 4,000 word email all night, like stayed up, about how it was like bad that the CIA intercepted fiber optic communications because light was a property of God. And therefore, by diverting that light, the CIA was doing Satan's work.
You wrote that?
Yeah, in like 2014, man.
That'd be a stunning email to read.
I gotta find it. I gotta go through it. And to I just got out of mental hospital, got back to Arkansas. I couldn't sleep and was like, let me tie up this loose end. This has been bothering me. I should email this to Ned. And now the guy's the fucking State Department spokesman. And I'm like, Jesus Christ, how's that
Talking about
happen?
failing upward.
I mean, he was the salutatorian at Georgetown. He's he's a nice guy, but I guess it's the same way. You ever hung out with professional athletes or real high? They're kind of fucking weird. They're intense, and they're really focused on one thing. And that I both can kind of respect, and I'm a little bit whoa, to that. That's a little weird to me.
So I have a question then. So you said that you had issues heading into the military, ADHD, and there were some other things that you were grappling with. How much did that
ADHD? I wasn't taking anything for it, and I was just drinking a lot. A lot of college kids drink a shit ton.
Oh God, I drank my share and everyone's share. And
I just thought college was stupid.
We all did that. American school. Woo!
Yeah,
But did the military your experiences in Afghanistan, did that amplify the things you were dealing with? Did it help you notice the things you were dealing with? Did you wake up one day and you're like,
no, it was a really good
there's
coping
something up
mechanism
here
actually for the things I think here's, and Matt will probably tell you this too, or other people. I was pretty happy in Afghanistan. I woke up every day knowing what I was going to do, what I had to do that day, right? I got a lot of exercise. I ate plenty of food. I had interesting stuff. The scenery was great. The weather was pretty good. A lot of sun. We got shot at occasionally. That was fun. We got blown up occasionally. That was less fun. I being a soldier. All that shit was fun, man. But it also, I was there for the longest conventional deployment of the global war on terror too. We got extended 4 months on our last day because we were doing such a good job of killing people. Yeah. So it sucked, man. There was a whole company that was back in New York because we were from Fort Drum, New York, and the colonel on Fort Drum that had to tell all the wives that your husband's they're not gonna be back for another 4 months. That colonel had to wear a vest. Showed up wearing a vest with 2 MPs who are not pieces of shit. I was totally kidding about that before. And had 2 of them on the side because he was afraid of the wives, which is honestly, dude, infantrymen marry some scary women. So that makes sense.
Except for you, your wife's completely and utterly non-frightening, right?
No, my wife terrifies me. She, yeah, you shit me? No,
buy her book or she will hurt you.
Buy her book. She's smarter than me. She's better looking than me. She's more qualified than me. And she's more of a real human being than me. And she's intimidating. I don't know. I married her. I'm lucky, but she scares me. But she's not when I,
she's not going to go after an officer who shows up at the door.
I mean, it depends on what he's there for. So watch yourself, officer. But
so how did you get to Bergdahl? How did you get to that? Now, let's refresh this, because I'll admit I had to actually, I know the story, but I had to go this morning and look it up just to refresh my memory. So for those who don't remember, here's the really simplified version. He was a soldier who had become disillusioned with everything, the war and the chain of command and a lot. And depending on the take of the story, he deserted or he walked away from his post and was captured and then held captive and eventually released through a prisoner exchange. And then Obama famously said, well, that's how wars wrap up, is we have to deal with all of this stuff.
Right.
And, that's overly simplified. I mean, to nth degree, there's other people that don't agree.
No,
that
like 2014, he was that soldier that was on the news. Like, yeah.
But it was big news for a little while, and then as we are as Americans, we seem to forget quite quickly as the media cycle goes by. But so how did you get involved?
Season of Serial, okay. So
say again?
Sarah Koenig, Mark Bull, who are not assets of the Central Intelligence Agency. No, they're not part of their media wing. No.
Keep the blinders on.
Ignore the Penn State connection. Don't worry about it. The it's fine.
So how did you get?
Ignore the fact that season 2 of Serial, which was about Bowe Bergdahl, started out with Sarah Koenig talking about a book by the title of, do you know?
No, I don't. You got me on this one.
Zoom.
What?
Zoom.
Oh, you and your Zoom.
Listen to episode 1 of season 2 of Serial. It's about it's so boring. I think they deliberately took a really compelling story and just made it boring as shit. Just as a way kind of, that's a media handling of a story, right? You take something that is intrinsically interesting, right? I find it incredibly interesting that elements of the National Security Council used a bunch of bubbas in Arkansas and elsewhere to smuggle cocaine into the country while they were smuggling arms down to the Nicaraguan Contras. Right?
What was what was the name? What was his name? It was the whole American Made movie, and Tom
Barry
Cruise
Seal.
played it.
Yeah.
Let's take that. Let's gloss that story up.
No, but the other thing is what that story covered up too was the fact that if you talk to old bubbas down in Mina, they'll talk about being out in, they were training Nicaraguan guerrillas in Arkansas, bringing up dudes to walk through the jungles and do mock war, or walk through the forests up here and do mock warfare, and then flying them back out. And occasionally those guys would run into a deer hunter. Imagine that.
That's not any different than what we were talking. Well, it is a little different, but ILEA in New Mexico, we were chatting about that a couple minutes ago. That's the name of the program that there's articles that I wrote that got picked up at Associated Press about them training law enforcement officials from around the world, and they would have people from other countries to come and teach them ways that we didn't do in the United States. So there were Israeli Mossad people who came in, and there were other groups that came in and said, well, this is how we do it. This is how we listen to people.
What I've learned is if you want to know about humanitarian policing techniques, the best agency to learn that from is definitely Shin Bet, the Israeli Internal Security Service. They're the kindest people.
They teach a lot of our people how to do stuff. So
I'm sure that's not at all one of the reasons that police fatalities are up, and police walk around with more shit wearing than I did when I was in Afghanistan.
And here's the interesting point, and this is one of the things the show's about, and this is why I'm glad you agreed to come on it and do the Zoom version of it, so you and I can look while we're talking. Is even if somebody's listening and they go, you know what, I don't believe 90% of what Matt's saying, and there's people out there that are gonna be like, oh,
that's fine.
He's
No,
but
it sounds
at least look into it. At least have the discussion and say, okay, maybe we are. You can't deny the fact that we're getting police training from other countries. That's a fact. You can't deny that.
And just the weird, and I have to be mindful of this a lot myself, but when I came back from Afghanistan and people would ask about it, and well-meaning people, somebody at church or whatever, and I would give an answer that didn't quite like match up with what they thought of, you know, like, because people want to feel good about what the troops are doing, right? Like,
absolutely, yeah.
It was always really interesting when they'd be like, well, I think you're wrong, you know, kind of thing. And I'm like, yeah, no, that seems fair, because you're a dentist in Newport News, Virginia. Like, yeah, that's cool. You got it. Like, go team, you know, like that's the co-author on the book. There was a point when we were driving somewhere, and, you know, he'd like gone to liberal arts college and then been a ski bum and like writer out in Sun Valley for a long time. And so he was kind of like, look, man, it kind of hurt me when I realized like the rhetoric didn't match the reality, you know? And like, I was like, yeah, I guess that's like deflating, but like also like, yeah, like it doesn't. Deal with it, people. Like you can live in fucking Fantasyville and like, you know, Pleasantville, and think nothing wrong happens on your side because your side is the right side, but both sides suck and both sides cause harm. So like, maybe we should figure that out a little bit. You know,
there's a point where you got to go, there is no Santa Claus. Everything isn't perfect.
Well, and there's also a point where you've got to, this is funny actually, because I was down in Fort Worth driving around with Saki, who he gave me this t-shirt. He was my interpreter. And he's down in Fort Worth, and he's a truck driver now. And his whole like they're all kicking ass. And you know, he wanted to live in America for a long time, so he's happy, you know. And we're driving around, and the Christmas lights are up in Fort Worth. He's like, "What the hell is that?" I'm like, "Oh, it's for Christmas, dude." Like, you know, because he got here last Christmas. And so then, and we got another one of the bros in the car. And so they're like, "Okay, so what do you do for Christmas?" You know, because the first like time in America for Christmas. So I tell them about Santa Claus, and like first of all, I was kind of surprised that they've worked for the Americans for like, you know, last like 15 years, and they don't know about Santa Claus. But you know, people don't really bring that shit up while deployed, I guess. But what blew their minds was they're like, "Wait, so you all lie to your children? You just all like, you all lie to them about this guy that like." And like when do you tell them that you're lying to them? And I'm like, you never tell them that you're lying to them. Like, you never tell them that there's a massive conspiracy to lie to all the children in America that we're all like complicit in. And that's, I mean, it's dumb, right? Like that's dumb, but also listen, Santa Claus was from Turkey. Okay. St. Nicholas was, and he's the patron saint of pawnbrokers, you know? So like, that's why there are 3 balls outside the pawn shops. Yeah.
The rest of the world looks at us sometimes and they're just like, oh my God, what, how do you stay together and function as a country?
Well, and like, but it's also weird too, because I'm around a lot of, like around a lot of people that are associated with academia. Right. And because my wife's a professor, and you know, I have friends anyways, like when I hear somebody that hasn't lived overseas or in another country talk about like, you know, oh, we should like, you know, it'd be like a lot more like better in like Sweden on this or that or the other, you know, or like Norway on that. I'm like, dude, like, wait, like, you know how like racist they are in like Norway? Like, you think like it's bad here? Like, holy shit, dude. You know, and I don't mean to single out like racist Norwegians here, but you all know who you are.
You know my last name, right?
Is it Norwegian? You're Viking. Yeah.
All right, keep talking, brother.
Okay. Well, I mean, look, man, you've been back there, right? Like, who has?
It's not perfect. Everyone, it's nothing.
Who has assimilated a population from like a refugee population from Africa better, Norway or America?
Hey, we're the Vikings were the least racist people in history because we just fucking killed everybody. We didn't care who you were.
I'm not blaming the Vikings, man. I'm not blaming the Vikings. We come like if we're going that way, like we kind of sort of come from the same people in one part, you know. But
you go back far enough, everybody, you know.
But no, I mean, I'll take away the Norwegians. I'll say the Germans. You know, like I'll bag on my people, right? You have any idea how fucked up the Germans are? Like, no way. And also, if you live there, you have to separate like your trash out into like 19 different recycling bins, and they'll like fine you. You know,
that's California too.
Well, it's because the Germans run California. I hate to tell you. So,
let me ask you a question though. I'm in LA. I'm right in the middle of it. The only other place is as wacky as that is San Francisco.
Where in LA are you?
West LA. I live right near UCLA.
Okay, like where? I love LA.
Just north of Westwood. Just north of Westwood. Yeah.
Dude, you have the best climate out there. I like the architecture. You have really good food. I guess if you don't have a scheduled commute, if you don't have to be places, you know, and can kind of like game the traffic.
Yeah.
I could see it. Like, I don't know.
It's gotten rough. It's gotten tough. Traffic's gotten bad. The state's getting, and I've talked about this on the show before. I used to consider myself a very progressive liberal until I saw that line move. And I'm closer to the center now, left center, than before. And I've talked about this on the show numerous times with numerous guests. And we talk about how California is getting to the point where the state is starting to set this social agenda for the state.
Yeah.
And one thing that I talk about all the time is they started implementing like, oh, well, in toy stores, you can't have a boys aisle and a girls aisle. You can't have pink, you can't have blue. And I've said this time and time again. That's not a decision that should be made by the government. That's a decision that should be made by the people. Yeah. And we as a society should kind of have discussions and be like, okay, we need to move the needle. We need to move the line. You know, the state shouldn't come in and be like, no Barbie dolls for girls.
Well, and also in California does the government really represent like the will of the people, or is it like the will of the Getty family? Because like, you know, I mean, we
have a long history of that. Poor Getty, it was Doheny's, and it was but yeah, and a lot of the things that you hear in this state, I don't know if you know this, we have ballot measures in the state, and a lot of those are actually funded by non-California entities. So for example, gay marriage, when we outlawed gay marriage a few years ago, and then it was overturned, that ballot measure was actually, you'll love this, in great part funded by people in Utah and by Mormon activists.
Oh, I know.
And here everybody's like, how did it pass? We're like, because millions of dollars came in from out of state in order to push it through.
Yeah. So, and because, I mean, I think too, people have a weird people have a conception of California that Hollywood creates, right? So they have a perception of California that California is largely like the nicer parts of LA and the nicer parts of San Francisco and Oakland.
It's three different states.
Yeah, and you're like, you know how many rednecks are in California?
Oh my God.
Like, holy shit, man.
You don't even have to go that far. You go out to Calabasas, or you go out just to Ventura, and suddenly you're in red country. Dude, you really are. Orange County.
Or like you're out in Malibu and you're like, you go a little too far and you're like, wait, what is this Oxnard shit? Like, what is going on? Like,
absolutely. It's so true.
Mean, it's beautiful up there, but like you go from you know, kind of like I don't know, people like give Arkansas a bad rap, but I'm like, yo, there's a lot of fucking Arkansas in like California. Like, do you not understand that? Like,
yeah, it's all perception.
Yeah.
It's like you said the same thing with, I think this is interesting, the tie back. You talked about how people will come up to you and be like, oh, well, I don't agree with what you're saying about the military or Afghanistan because I believe this. It's all perception. Right. It's all, we got to get away from that. And we got to get away from this idea of, no, I see the world, everybody has to be the way I see it. because we have 300 million different opinions in this country. They can't all be right.
And also that just because I see the world this way, somebody else sees the world that way, and someone else sees it the third way, that you guys can't all sit at a table and eat, have a meal, talk about stuff. Do we all have to agree that Empire Strikes Back is the best Star Wars?
Yes.
I mean, obviously we do, because otherwise you're a fucking monster. But the prequels don't exist. What, that piece of shit George Lucas, man, he really lost me when I was looking through photos from high school days, early high school days or middle school days. I was such a Star Wars dork, man. I loved Star Wars. And then those prequels came out. I mean, I was really maybe that was the root of some of my issues. It was just that trauma,
I believe that.
Star Wars ripped from me.
No, we're going to dive into this for a second, because I agree with you, because I'm a little bit older than you.
I'm 38.
Yeah, I'm a little older than you.
Yeah.
So for me, I grew up with the original series, but that was a neat time because they had the books and they had the comics and they had this whole other universe. So we were creating our idea of what the Star Wars universe was, playing with the toys.
I have to let this terrorist out.
Okay.
Well, no, and we had the books were good. Timothy Zahn books, those were good.
Captain of the Empire,
or Admiral Thrawn, he was cool.
You're such a dork, Dad Deep. This is awesome.
Oh, bro, no, you want to know? You want to know something super dorky? Do you know about Star Wars, the customizable card game?
Yeah, I remember that.
Magic? Yeah. I was the number one ranked player for the Yavin 4 region in Star Wars, the customizable card game. The Yavin 4 region was basically the Mid-Atlantic. But I would go, my mom would drop me off at a comic book store in Newport News, Virginia, which now I'm holy fuck. She trusted me a lot. Cause and I would play Star Wars cards against what in retrospect were were you guys why were you playing Star Wars cards? You're adults, what were you doing? You're 30 years old.
They got kicked out of their mom's basements. And they had to go somewhere.
The other thing was one of the guys, I still remember his name was Curtis with 2 S's, and he was Baha'i, the religion Baha'i. Mm-hmm. And I remember that because he wore a shirt that would say, "I'm Baha'i, ask me why." So I would, and we talked about that. And and I kind of like the Baha'i too, because when you talk to it, you're yeah, we believe that too. And you're really? Cool, okay. You kind of you're pulling in everything. I like that. All right. But so yeah, that was, so I know, fucking Greedo did not shoot first. Also, can we talk just a little bit about how, when you were a kid watching Star Wars, did you understand that Han Solo smuggled drugs for a living?
Not when I was young, no, but looking back, it became very clear.
Right?
Yeah, looking back, I'm
I did not, yeah. There were a lot of kind of weird implications of Star Wars I didn't understand.
I started reading. Did you read all the like Han Solo at Star's End, and there was a whole series of books that kind of got into more of his criminal stuff? And that's what bothered me when Disney took over. They took over all of my childhood, and they went, "Your childhood didn't happen."
Yeah,
this whole world that was created for you. Poof. And I just kind of went, you know what? I'm gonna live in my childhood and the dreams and Star Wars figures that I had, and take that. Walt Disney.
I still have some of the action figures. Yeah. It was a good time to be a kid, man. Because the internet was sort of bullshit, but you could still kind of look stuff up. But there was one computer at the kitchen table, and
you'd have to wait 20 minutes for something to download.
Yeah, wait 20 minutes to see a boob.
I remember those days. I remember everybody sent those. They would send those little videos around that were 10 seconds long, and
Tiffany Amber,
really bad ones.
Man.
Yeah. I want to ask you a military question though, because
Yeah.
I like to ask this because I have a lot of acquaintances who are in the military and I've interviewed a lot of people. I think I asked Matt this too. When people ask, when people find out that you were in the military and they automatically, the first thing they say is thank you for your service.
Yeah.
When they don't know anything about your history, they don't know anything about you, and it comes out so like just, it's like, have a nice day. Thank you for your service. What thoughts go through your head? Like, what do you think when someone says that to you?
Oh man, it used to, like, when I was actually in the army, it would make me like really mad, and I'd be like kind of hostile to people. Like, like, thank you for your taxes. Oh, well, except your like taxes aren't paying for my, like, yeah, like,
Oh,
but now I get this because I, since like pandemic started, I'm like a Lowe's rat, like Lowe's, the home improvement store.
yeah, I totally know it. Yeah.
So I'm in there all the time and bring the dogs, and you get a 10% discount, if you were ever an enforcer for the U.S. government, like I was. And so they'll do the like thank you for your service thing, and I've tracked this for like the past 4 or 5 years because I've given the same like kind of stock response, which was basically like, turned out I was just like helping prop up a bunch of like heroin trafficking pedophiles that we later assassinated. So
this is what you would say this to people?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. That couldn't have gone over well.
Well, here's the thing. It's gone over better and better every year. Like I've noticed that, like, more and more, there's less of this like blind genuflection to the idea that military service equals virtue, right? Which I appreciate and think is like kind of cool. I also like the discounts and I like the parking spots, so like
fair.
I like the fact that I can get on a flight like slightly earlier by like showing my card. I got on, dude, we saved so much money when we went to Paris right before the pandemic. Me and my wife and my stepdaughter, I was like I got to bug up my ass. Like, we all had to go to Paris for like Thanksgiving of 2019, right? Which turned out to be like a good idea. But also I'm like, I'm worried because like I'm a writer. I'm not exactly like loaded with money. And the like shit in Paris is expensive. But if you're disabled, and I am 100% disabled veteran, you can get on all that stuff for free. And so with a caretaker, and my kid was she was a kid still at the time, and by like the French standard. And so she got in for free. So we got into all this shit for free. Like the Eiffel Tower, all the museums. Like, France is great. Like, thank you, France. You love like American veterans. You're the best. It was a
special connection.
Awesome. I mean, really, like, we're more like the French and the Russians than we are like anyone else in the world. We're not like the British very much. We're not like the Germans very much. Like, this is just, anecdotal experience and like driving around, but like French rednecks, very similar to American rednecks, That's why there's so many of them like in Louisiana.
Hunting gators.
Dude, crazy, man. Crazy people.
When you got back from Afghanistan, did you go right to Menlo Park?
No. I went, so I got back, I kicked it in upstate New York for like the summer until November. I got promoted to sergeant, and then I got reassigned to Fort Monroe, Virginia, to the headquarters U.S. Army Training and Doctrine Command to be the command sergeant major's driver. And then I got a DUI like a year later, so I couldn't drive anymore. So then I was like the speechwriter, like utility player. Like, I don't know. I just kind of was like,
I just found a place for you.
I mean, they were just kind of like, you're going to get out of the army, right? I'm like, yeah. Like,
They're just biding their time. Was there, when you came back, how long were you in Afghanistan? 18 months?
16 months. Yeah.
16 months. Okay. So you came back. Was there a cultural change? Like, was there a weird culture shock coming back with the experiences that you had coming back to the United States, or were you? It sounds like you were in your head a lot, and there was a lot going on. You were figuring out your own things.
I think a little less so than like maybe some of the other guys, because I had been in other like the culture shock other people felt like having only been in America, then all of a sudden being in Afghanistan for that long and coming back and there's America, right? I don't know. I'd lived in other cultures, 2 years in Turkey, 3 years in Germany, 2 years at that Illuminati high school, like founded by Lord Mountbatten, Prince Charles, and Armand Hammer.
Oh God, don't. I just wrote an article on Prince Andrew. Don't get me started on the royal family.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. There's a picture of King Hussein and Queen Noor up in the castle, and there's a building there called the Castle. Anyways, so what was the question again?
When you came back, like, so you're saying that you had these experiences over, not culture shock, like, just, did you feel you came back to the United States, the way you looked at the world, had it changed after your 16 months?
Well, like, I came back looking at the world through a killer's eyes, right? And like with like the perspective that the world was full of things that might kill me, so I should probably kill them first. Right?
Yeah.
Like that was just training and mindset. And that takes a little while to shed. And then, I think the other part, like, that people underestimate about both the military and the security services is like, I came back and I had a lot of disdain for Americans, right? For like these fucking fat people, like, Jesus Christ, like,
I'm fighting for their freedom.
Like, oh, fucking Jesus, like, just a lot of like rage and contempt, like, which isn't good. It's not healthy. Like, you shouldn't have that, but like, I'm just being like, honest. I'd walk through the mall in Syracuse and be like, just like mad, and so I guess that's culture shock.
Did the drinking, was that part of the reason of the drinking?
I think
like,
so.
Was it to numb that?
I think both to numb it and to, as I've gotten older, I've gotten better at kind of like channeling and controlling like my I don't know, for lack of a better word, like my sensitivity, maybe, or like, that
makes sense.
But the world,
anxiety and anger and disillusion, and we keep going. Just
like the world can be a very loud place, right? And so just the way like some people need to put on like earphones before they go out, like it could be a little bit loud, for lack of a better word. And I still I smoke enormous amounts of pot. I smoked a joint right before I came on here. Like, that's probably why, like, occasionally I'll be like, I don't know what you're talking about, man.
You're doing fine.
Do you mind if I go let my dog in? He's whining.
Do it. No, it's all good. It's all good.
Come in there. Come here, buddy. Come on. You want to come up? You can come up.
Oh, we have a special guest.
All right. I guess he's not going to come up. But
we're just saying, like,
no, there. I'm going to close this. All right. Sorry, sir.
Nope, you're good. So how do you? So the alcohol. So you come back,
right?
And you're trying to find. Are you trying to find your place? Or are you trying to find your mental? No,
I'm still trying to die, man. I didn't die in Afghanistan.
Why did you want to die? Tell me why.
I don't know. I don't know.
Was it an active thing, or was it just kind of a weird thing in the back of your head? It's like,
it got active at one point. Like, that's how I wound up in the mental hospital the first time. But no, I think it was always just kind of a passive thing. I don't know. Like,
do you still have it?
No, I don't think so. Like, I don't, no, I actually am kind of excited to wake up and do stuff every day.
Okay. So how much of that is getting past the military? How much of that is your wife? How much of that is writing? So what is it that helped you bridge that?
I think like just getting older, being my wife definitely like, but also I couldn't until I got to a certain, like I was a fucking terrible boyfriend to a couple of women, right? Like just, I mean, Matt knows a couple of them, like just not the best, like, just kind of a piece of shit, man. I had my own stuff going on, like, and so until I could get to a place where I could be like a decent dude, and be like a net asset. And I don't know, she might not always agree with me on that, but like,
I've been married
like,
too, so I get it.
Yeah, but like, and there's a kid involved, and like knowing like I can't be winding up like in the like mental hospital when there's a kid at the house, that's not good. And so until I could be to that point of stability, then those other things would like kind of like, I guess it's like I had to put the foundation down, right? And then like the other kind of supports could go up, right?
Was there a moment where you just kind of went, this has got to change? Or was it a gradual thing?
No, there were like, and there's still moments of things that have to change. Like you'll notice I'm drinking a ginger sparkling water, right?
That's very product placement right there.
On top of a coffee. Yeah, I wish I got money from like the Bezos empire. But I should pitch them actually on a story. But I quit because I quit soda. I quit like Coke because I used to drink Diet Coke, like 17 of them a day.
Yeah.
And so no, just gradual moments of like sharp edges of mine that needed to be like chiseled off or, like sanded down, and like some hard like gut check moments, I mean, when you have friends that like you respect and that have known you since you were like 16, being like, hey, you're an asshole, like stop being an asshole, like that, you can either like look at that and say like, oh, you're wrong, or you can look at that and say like, oh, like what is it about like the culture of the people I'm around where the kind of thing that like somebody I care about thinks I'm an asshole for, but like I would be rewarded for that, in like the Southern.
Yeah.
And so that was kind of a gut check moment too.
Does she call you out on it too, your wife?
Yeah. I mean,
yeah, absolutely.
No, I wouldn't like, I also like part of the reason I fell in love with her and we like got married is because I respect her and she makes me a better person, she makes me a better person. I have to like, I also can't like, I can occasionally like be, and like, have a, but like not all that often because like who wants to deal with that shit on a daily basis, So, and she don't mind if I wear a tiger tracksuit around, which is cool.
Let that be the worst thing.
I mean, he's red.
How long you been married?
2 years. We were supposed to get married on March of 2020 in Santa Fe, New Mexico, at the Loretto Chapel, and pandemic, and so we snuck out to Montana in June and got married at the end of June. Like eloped. The guy that had introduced us, that we have writer friends that are in Livingston, Montana, husband and wife couple, and they introduced us. And so they actually married us, and it was a small thing. The kid was there, the dogs were there, like it was fun, and it was nice. But we still like, I don't know, like that would have been a weird party because like 100 of our friends, and I got like some weird friends, man. Like I thought, so we'll have to do like a 5-year, we'll add you onto the list.
I appreciate good party. I'll go, especially after everything we've gone through the last 2 years. I think I could go for a really good party with some strange people. And
in Santa Fe, like, come on, we were gonna eat at the Rio Chama. Like, how do you get that back?
No, it'll happen. Tell me though, what would you tell somebody now after your experiences? Some kid came up to you, 18, 19, 20-year-old kid, said, I'm going to go in the military. What would you say to him? Happened
in Subway. I was on the way to go
fishing.
Of
all places, Subway. Good.
My dad, we were in Subway and like got talking with somebody. He's like, I'm thinking about going in the like thing. Look, I still, of any organization or like thing in America, I have a lot of fondness for the U.S. Army, right? Like it's the way some people like look at their college or their high school or whatever. Like I kind of look at the Army that way. Like I like it, I like the people. I like the can-do attitude. I like all the stuff. It's fun. It's a shame that like their ultimate purpose is like to like violently kill people. But aside from that, like it's I mean,
you got to understand your part. Like you are playing a part in a bigger system.
Yeah. So I told this kid I just said, hey, like think real hard about whether you want to go into the Army. Cause like I said, go into the Coast Guard. Like who doesn't, like, what's wrong with the Coast Guard? What do they do that's shitty? They save people, right? From they interdict like drug boats. That's fine. Like, okay. Like who hates a coastie, And so I told the kid, I was like, look, it's like you can be a cop or a fireman. Like, what do you want to be? Like a coastie's like a fireman. No one hates a fireman, A lot of people hate cops. Like, a lot of people hate like Army dudes when the Army dudes are invading them.
What about so that's an interesting question then, because what about these kids that are going in and being like drone pilots, and it's become such a remote, like it's one thing you're an infantryman.
No, like it's remote, but it's also, I mean, okay, I'll put it this way. If you could
there's a distance though, there's a distance because they're like,
if you could push a button right now, right, and kill me, would it affect you? Right? Like
I don't know if you're ever on TikTok. There's a video like that. There's like,
but would that would that fuck you up?
I think it would. It would.
Yeah. So now imagine you've just observed me going about my daily life, puttering around in my garden, petting my dogs, maybe kissing my wife as she goes off to work. And now's the time to kill me via a drone. You're still going to be fucked up, right? Like you don't smell what that's like. But dude, I've been to Creech Air Force Base, right? In Indian Springs, Nevada, where like most of the drone pilots are, where there are British drone pilots. We have British drone pilots. I thought we kicked them out in 1776. Apparently not. We have British drone pilots operating out of Creech Air Force Base in Nevada. I took a tour of the Nevada test site with them one time. And they were just on my bus. I was a civilian on the tour. And like there's a gas station liquor store right across the street from Creech. I walked in there and I asked the lady, I was like, hey, people buy a lot of like liquor here, like pilots? She's like, yeah. And dude, guys will get off work, and this is less of a problem now. I think they've cracked down on it a little bit, but guys used to get off work and just get like shit hammered on that highway back to Vegas or Henderson. Cause it's a straight line.
Yeah. Yeah. I've driven it a lot.
And what Vegas cop is going to pull over a drone pilot for drunk driving who's like, sorry, man, I just like took out a village in Somalia. It was kind of terrible. So I'm just taking the edge off. Like they're going to get that.
On your way.
Yeah. Like we'll give you a ride home, man. That's fine.
Do you ever have you seen the Jack Ryan show on Amazon? Have you ever seen that show?
I mean,
there's the whole drone pilot.
I have to plug that I maintain a site called The Hunt for Tom Clancy.
Segue. So the plot line from the Amazon show where there's the drone pilot who kills somebody and he goes to the Middle East to like make amends with the family.
Yeah.
Because he's so fucked up by it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I don't think it's not going to improve. Like, that doesn't, and it doesn't help. Like, as much as the US government tries to train in sociopathy to like people to be able to kill without like compunction, people are pretty good, like, I mean, I'm a cynical guy, and like, you know, I have kind of a like glass half full view of the world, but like I have a pretty good view of people. Like I rarely meet a bad person, you know, like a truly bad person. And I think people see, like, they get through that shit, you know? And so it doesn't matter if you're killing, like you still understand that you're killing somebody.
Yeah.
You know, it's the people that are really resistant to that, you know, that don't understand their part in that machine, that are often the ones that have trouble with what I have to say.
So there's this belief in some circles that these kids are basically, oh, well, they're just playing video games. They're like, woo, I just took out this, I just took out that. That doesn't seem to be the case. It's not this desensitized
Well, I mean, here's the other
world like that.
Is when I was right up there, up close and personal, you know, I'm left-handed. So I'm not left-handed, but I shoot left-handed because I'm left eye dominant. So,
Right.
you know, dude, that shit's thrilling. You cheer after that. Like, you know, you hoot and holler. It's fun as fuck. Like, you don't start to regret that until you're back home, you know?
Okay, so that brings up an interesting question. So I had Greg Carino on the show. He's a friend of mine. He's a former pilot. He's a former military. He flew missions in Afghanistan, not bombers. He flew missions.
What did he fly?
The Warthog.
Yeah, A-10 pilots, they rule.
Yeah. So Greg's a nice guy. And we were talking on the show the other day, and we were talking about apologetics. We were talking about how, you know, sometimes people get upset about America apologizing for certain policies or stuff like that. And I asked him straight out, because we're at this point, we know each other. I'm like, dude, answer me honestly. Are there ever times where you as a pilot, you look back on a mission and you want to apologize for what you did because you were following orders, and you're not supposed to question orders? That's the chain of command. That's what the military is based on. Because if soldiers ask questions, they're not going to follow the mission. So I go, are there times you look back and you realize there might have been faulty intel, there might have been other justifications for what you were doing, and you look back and you're kind of like, wow, that was a mistake and I am sorry for it? And he said, yeah, there are times when I do, but it's a case by case personal thing. And I won't get into what he said, listen to the episode. But are there times where you look back and you're kind of like, whoa, that, I wish I could take that back, or I wish I could, you know, rethink that, or I could apologize to the family or something. Is there anywhere in that spectrum that kind of hops up with you now that you look back at it?
I mean, dude, like, look, we slept like on this road outside of like Miri District Center in Ghazni because Lara Logan went up there and interviewed some Taliban dudes, and like Bush saw it and got all pissed. Sent us up there for 4 months. And like, so if I wanted to take a shit, right, I'd have to go, you know, like take my little like stool, my camp stool that I'd cut a hole in, and like go off kind of behind a rock wall and like sit there and, you know, take a shotgun with me. So I had a weapon on me, but with inside of the trucks and stuff. And kids would come up, right? Because like we'd give the kids shit, you know, like give them like candy bars and radios and stuff like that, right? So you like go to take a shit and you want some privacy, and like a kid's not gonna like leave you alone. Like, no, I don't really feel that great about like pointing a shotgun at like an Afghan child so he wouldn't look at me while I took a shit in his country. You know, like I'd like to go apologize to that kid, but he's probably dead.
Matt said something about that once. We were talking about that. It's just the idea of the kids. How did he put it? Maybe you remember this. The idea that like a sergeant, it was a sergeant or an LT said something like, we might as well just kill all these kids right now because they're going to all end up dying, or they're going to become enemy combatants because of the situation. Do you remember Matt saying that? Or I think it was Matt. I mean, if I'm quoting Matt incorrectly, I apologize.
No, but I mean, the sentiment of what you're saying sounds very like, yeah, it's
nihilistic, but it's true.
Well, and
war's not pretty.
No, and it's hard to like again, just think about if you're in California. Think about if some soldier from the Gulf Cooperative Council, you know, the United Arab Emirates' mercenary army, right? Decided to like squeeze LA, and they were like bursting into every third or fourth house to like grab out people that they considered a threat.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, what are the kids of LA going to think in like 30 years about their friends in the Gulf Cooperative Council?
Right.
Probably not going to like them very much, right?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
probably going to have a grudge. I don't know. Like,
we don't want to have that discussion, though.
well,
is it because you're not supposed to question it in the middle?
What?
Like, there's the whole idea, don't question, you could say it about COVID, you could say it about war, you could say it about Vietnam, you can go anywhere. It's like, look, let's get through this situation first, and then we'll talk about it afterwards. Let's not question it in let's not question it in mid-mission.
No, listen, the herd is stampeding off the cliff. Like, let's wait until everyone is safely off the cliff before we can talk about it.
Figure out what started the stampede.
We really, we just like, we'll pick it up. We're Americans. Like, every one of us had an ancestor or a like person in our family tree that wound up here because they were too fucking crazy for the home country, unless you're Native American, right? Like, like there is, I mean, like, I look at like the people that brought me here, like, I don't know, man, if you're getting like kicked out of Switzerland in the 1600s, and then you're getting kicked out of Germany in the 1700s, and then you're getting kicked out of England, like, and then like you wind up just like going from like the East Coast all the way to Idaho, like, dude, and that's the whole country, like, my friend Tim, he's from the Bay Area. His family came over from China like 4 generations ago. And, like, similar thing. They're super intense, right? Like, like they were super intense in China. They're super intense here, like my family was super intense wherever they were. They're super intense here. I think people underestimate the fact that like America is an amalgamation of like some of the nuttiest, most intense people on the planet.
We get selective about that because we embrace that in some ways, and then in other ways we say it's not true. We say we have the American independent spirit, which we embrace, which comes from that nuttiness that got us all here. But we don't want to talk about the nuttiness.
Well, and I mean, also like, look, I've been hanging out with my friends down in Fort Worth. 43 families from Orkney, Afghanistan, that have resettled in Fort Worth and are, like, happy Texans now. Like, they fucking love Texas, right? Like, Texas rules. I'm also like very interested in the fact that like these guys are all incredibly like capable individuals and soldiers, right? Because like some of them were interpreters, and then some of them were like these guys, right? And so then I start to go back through, and like I live in Northwest Arkansas. There are a lot of people with names like Zhang around here, Hmong people, right? Who were resettled here in the late 70s, right? Mid 70s, after Vietnam, when their families were working for the Americans, right? And I started to think about that too, like how many, like when we talk about the like because I started to look at how the Muslim population in Dallas-Fort Worth got to be so big, right? It's known as like the Medina of America now. Like Texas is a huge Muslim population. I was like shocked to go around and like I was like, dude, like we're going to all these halal marts, like this rules. Because like I again grew up in Turkey, so I've got a real like special kind of like I like Muslim culture, right? Like it kind of makes me feel at home. So it's cool to like feel at home in Texas in a like totally non-Texan way. You know what I mean?
Yeah. There's little spots, or Michigan's that way too. There's a really large Muslim population
or
there.
Fremont, with Afghans too. Like, but I started to think about just the demographics of like the foreign populations that settled here at various times, right? Like we have a wave of Afghan refugees and immigrants right now, that are largely the result of the conflict in Afghanistan started by the US, right? Similar thing with, say, the Hmong population. Now in Arkansas, too, we have a large, in Northwest Arkansas, we have a large Marshallese population. Why is that? Because we resettled a bunch of Marshallese here to be chicken farmers after we exploded their islands in the South Pacific with multiple thermonuclear devices, right?
Yeah. Bikini Island.
Yeah. And then we bitch that they have problems here. You know, like Marshallese people aren't really, and actually, like, that's not that big of a complaint here, but I've heard that complaint, you know, in like, oh, there's like problem with assimilation with Marshallese people. And you're like, yeah, you fucking wonder why? Like, you know, you wonder why they might not be happy to be chicken farmers in like,
but we pick and choose that. We pick and choose that because if it's like you go to Chicago, there's a huge Irish population. There's a huge Italian population. We don't tell them to assimilate. We go, hey, we're going to go have good Italian food tonight, or we're going to go to a good Irish bar that's really owned by Irish people. You know, we pick and choose how much we want them to assimilate and how we treat them.
And it generally comes down to like, are you going to like speak in a way that is non-threatening to me, and are you going to vote my way?
Yes.
You know, because like, you like, I mean, I grew up Mormon. There are plenty of Mormons that aren't assimilated. You know what I mean? Like, there's 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 a weird kind of push-pull on this. You have to be the same as all of us to be an American, or you have to be different, you know, and like your own kind of like unique identifier.
You got to feel for somebody who moves here under those circumstances to try and understand the rules, because we don't even understand the rules sometimes.
No,
you got to feel for them.
It's one of the more like heartbreaking things to one of the problems that I'm having, like writing this, is like Nabi and Saki and Muhammad are so much more idealistic about America than I am. Like they still got family members trapped over there, right? And they're like Firewheel, because my name's Farwell, you know, but like they say Firewheel, like Firewheel, and I love it. So Firewheel, you know, all we need to do is find a senator and like, you know, get them. And I'm like, dude, no, like, no, it won't help. Like, we should probably like, how much money you got? We should probably cut a deal with the Taliban. Like, you know, like, they're not gonna help. All that shit you believe isn't true. Like,
why are they so optimistic? Why do you think that is?
Because, dude, for the last like 10 years, 15 years, they've been hanging around with like can-do Americans, right? That they really liked, that really liked them. They've been watching Hollywood movies, and they've been dreaming of going to America. Like, I remember sitting around with Saki in Miri District Center. We're watching American Pie, right? Like on a laptop, like on a DVD player. We're sitting around, and like Saki like looks and he's like, hey man, that's a nice compound. And we're like, Saki, that's a fucking high school. That's not a compound. And he's like, oh, okay. Like, you know, and then we're watching it, and he like, at one point in the movie, he like looks at us and he's like, hey, like, can I ask you a question? Like, is America really like that? We're like, yeah, like sort of, you know, it's a movie, but you know, he's like, you got like women like that? We're like, yeah. and he's like, and then he like looked at us and he's like, so you're saying like you have that back in America, but you chose to come here and fight in the army, and I am trusting my life to someone that would make a decision that is that stupid. You know, like that was Saki had a mind-blowing moment where he's like, he got mad at us. He got mad at us for being in the army and leaving America because we could have been like at the lake in Michigan, you know,
having sex with Shannon Elizabeth or Elizabeth Berkley, or you know.
Like, fair point, right? Like, yeah.
Makes me reconsider my choices.
Yeah, so that's been, I mean, that's been one of the like things where you're like, oh, I mean, it must be kind of what it's like when like you get to like the the last level of Scientology, you know, like you paid them all your money, and like you pay them the last thing, they're like, here's L. Ron's final message, and you read it, and you're like, that's it, like, shit, you know, like.
Well, you were formerly Mormon too, so you can say that too. It's like you got through, and you're like, wait, I don't get my own planet. What the?
I was man, it was, my wife was like, we were looking at slides from Turkey, and there was one time where they had state conference like at Ephesus, you know, like where like Mary lived after Jesus was crucified, and you know, we're like what, you know, one of the churches in the New Testament, and my wife looking at the slides of this, she's like, wait, how did like Mormons, how were they able, like, we bribed the guard, like. And she's looking at the thing, and it's all like dudes in like dark suits and sunglasses. She's like, I can't tell like where the line between like the Mormon and the CIA is. And I'm like, I really don't know either. Like,
that's a whole other show. I have Mormons in my family, so I feel like I have the ability to like actually say a few things. So
yeah, no, it's I mean, it's real interesting.
That's a deep dive. That's like a 5-hour show on its own. Is that what you're working on now? Are you working on a book about your friends that have come here? You mentioned that you were trying to write on it.
I am working on I got commissioned to write an article for The Economist's web magazine called 1843 Magazine. So I'm doing that. And then I don't know, that might like, it's one of the things that may be a book, you know, but I don't know. I tried to do that Hunt for Tom Clancy thing as a book. No one wanted it. So now I do it as a Substack. Got me maybe a little like gun shy, a little discouraged, you know, for just a little bit, but I'm getting some of the mojo back. I thought about like the Flynn stuff might have been a fun book and still might be a fun book, you know, because it's all kind of weird, like really weird.
Are you watching all of the January 6th commission, and are you keeping an eye on all of the people? Because I know you told me you interviewed Stone, and you know, I mean, you've talked to a lot of those people.
I have. Yeah, no, I think like I have quite a few thoughts on the January 6th thing and like the reaction to it. I don't know. I mean, I think like Liz Cheney, I'm supposed to think Liz Cheney is a person of virtue, you know, like someone I'm supposed to like, oh, she's going to be like a bulwark of like fucking American democracy. Like ask her.
They're trying to recruit her to be vice president. You've heard that, right? To run with Biden in 2024.
I mean, fucking, they've lost their minds. They've lost their goddamn minds. Like, really? No, I thought actually it was, and I was talking about this with a friend of mine that used to be fairly like a director of a federal law enforcement service. And I was like, so it's going to be like really funny when they call Flynn up there and Liz Cheney is like asking Flynn why he did something. And he's like, well, ma'am, because that was the way your father directed that I do it when I was running his assassination squad for him. You know, like, I don't know that anyone's, it's all theater. Like, I don't know anyone's thought through the like actual like implications beyond like any of this. But if Trump and all that crew was willing to go to like all that length, right? You think they didn't keep a copy of like all that Epstein material that they lifted from the like brownstone?
Yeah,
like,
there's going to be a moment.
Something where it's like New York Attorney General says like they're going to get Trump this time. I'm like, yeah,
No.
yeah, because that guy who like played footsie with the mafia for his whole career didn't keep any sort of blackmail material that was available to him. No, he wouldn't have done that as insurance, you know. And I was talking about that with my friend who like, it may sound nuts when I say it, but like when someone who's been around all these people all the time is like, oh yeah, no, I'm pretty sure this son has it. Like, you know, like what are we really dealing with there? It's
Epstein
all a show.
didn't kill himself.
He's alive,
Epstein
man.
Totally committed. Oh, you think he's alive?
I mean, I'm just saying, like, do you really go to all that trouble to like just kill a dude? They knocked out cameras, they knocked out guards, and they had a body on a gurney.
Well, the guards were playing. The guards were on TikTok. The guards were on The guards were on TikTok or social media or something. They claimed they're like, "Oh, I was into my phone. I wasn't paying attention."
Yeah,
that's one of the stories.
I absolutely wasn't paying attention when the Mossad guy like said what my child was wearing to school that day.
Yeah. Do you think? What about the John Doe list that Maxwell supposedly is going to give up? What do you think about that? Who do you think's on that list?
Oh, I mean,
or do you think that list will ever see the light of day?
I think there are a lot of people with interest in that list never being shown.
That's very accurate.
And I would say there are a lot of people that are like familiar faces to us that we'd be surprised at.
Yeah.
You know? And I mean, Andrew, I don't say that's Clinton. Like, yeah, I mean, like, you know, when you just kind of get down to like how many, I mean, dude, Harvey Weinstein and that whole crew, you know, like, and the Nexium crew, when you get down like all those like, and the intersections between all those, like, I think she's got a hell of an insurance policy, and I think she'll probably like wait for stuff to die down, and then they'll get her out of there too.
She comes from an intelligence family too. Her dad
published The Mirror, was killed on his yacht, which was named the Lady Ghislaine, and was later sold to Donald Trump. And he was given a state like burial in Israel for his you know, services to the state, like big spy.
Yeah.
Originally checked too.
Oh, so there's so much. It's the other thing that always fascinates me is that Clinton painting. I don't know why, but there's just something so bizarre about it's just, and you've seen it too. It's such a creepy.
Well, have you ever been down to Hot Springs, Arkansas and seen the brothel town I grew up in?
I've driven through Hope.
I mean, they say I'm a man from Hope, but the man from Hope spent a lot of time in Hot Springs. You know, I mean, dude,
that was pretty good.
Well, I met him once up here at the university.
Oh, really?
Okay. I'll tell you one thing that's creepy as fuck, which is the Clinton House and Museum, right? Which is where Bill Clinton lived right after Yale Law School with Mrs. Clinton. Noticed this the other day. I was driving past it. Right across the street from the high school athletic facility. And then, but no, I met him once. He was this was 2010. I just broken my back, so I still fucked up on like Percocet, you know, like, I noticed like these Secret Service dudes walking around campus around the University of Arkansas. And so I asked like the Mormon missionary girls what was up, because they always know. And they were like, oh, the president's coming like tomorrow. So I'm like, oh, that's interesting. So I went, and then he was going to the law school for like a private thing. And I just like kind of walked in there and went up and walked over to the Secret Service agent. So I didn't get like tackled, you know, and like say, hey, I'd like to meet the president, and give him like, I had my combat infantry badge, like a little one. And then I used to wear like a bracelet for my brother is dead. He died in 2010. He was a helicopter pilot for the Army, chief warrant officer for Gary Mark Farwell. So, you know, I like to remind politicians that like people at the end like die because of things that they say to do. And so, you know, I talked to the Secret Service guy, and he's cool as fuck. Like, I like the Secret Service guy. And he says, you know, wow, we'll make sure you meet the president. So Clinton's about ready to go, and I give him the bracelet, and he goes to like put it in his thing, and the Secret Service dude Greg is like, no sir, like look at it. And so Clinton goes, puts on his glasses, looks at me, and it's like, this is your brother? I'm like, yes sir. He's like, we lost him this year. And Clinton starts to like tear, and dude, I've met a lot of people. I'm not intimidated by very many people, and I'm not impressed by very many people. I like people, but like, I don't get like starstruck. That dude fucking, like, man, he's the most charismatic person on the planet. Like, he said that to me. He looked at me. He gave me a hug, right? And like afterwards, if he had been like, now, Matt, I need you to take this ink pen and go stab that gentleman in the neck, I've been like, yes, sir. Like, that sounds great. Like, thank you for the opportunity to stab someone,
I've heard that before.
It frightened me, actually, like a little bit. It was, I've never had it since, with anybody. Like, he's a uniquely spellbinding individual.
Yeah. If you read George Stephanopoulos' book, I want to say it's called Ulti-Human. It was a long time ago whenever. Yeah. He gets into that a little bit.
Whiny in that. Like, isn't he whiny in that?
Yeah. It felt like he was, it was such a weird book because it was like, you got this insight, but at the same time you were like, it felt like he was setting up for something. It was like he was applying to be on the news.
And you see it now. Like, you see exactly what it was.
You see the path. You see him. He was setting up.
It's not weird at all either that George Stephanopoulos, while on a Rhodes Scholarship to Oxford, just hopped down to the Sudan for like a few months while there was a CIA coup going on, or like a coup going on there. I'm sure that's nothing.
But so I've said this on the show before. Like, I had somebody in my life who was very important to me, who was really went down the conspiracy rabbit hole, like to the nth degree, like sovereignty, like 9/11 truther, COVID. I always say she was.
Are we talking Admiralty flag, like yellow fringe? You shall not like tell me if I can drive because I'm allowed to travel, sort of thing.
Exactly. Like, she doesn't have a driver's license. She doesn't believe that you have to, all of that stuff. You're shaking your head.
Yeah.
And the weird thing to me is,
dude.
Yeah.
I know.
So the weird thing to me is always like, a lot of the things that they talk about turn out to be true, but it's not. It's who they say are behind the scenes is where they're wrong.
Right.
So it's like they talk about like the Great Reset, or they talk about, COVID stuff, or they talk about this. And it's like, okay, I see what you're saying is real, but it's not this dark cabal that you think it is, the Bilderberg Bohemian, that's where your issue. If you could get away from that and have this intelligent discussion about, look, I'm analyzing this information or that information, because a lot of them are amateur attorneys, and they're just like, well, because that comma is not there, that I don't have to pay my taxes because that comma wasn't in a document from 100 years ago. It's like, no, that's not exactly how it works.
It gets to be some weird, like, there's a lot of people in like Utah or Idaho that will never quite finish their houses, like there'll be one portion of their house that's still like a little bit like framed up, because that way they don't have to pay taxes on it because it's still under construction. And I'm like, actually, like, that's pretty cool. Like, it's an idea. Like, shit. But no, I found that to be something that's really interesting with like the way that attention is sort of diverted, even the term, say, conspiracy theory, right? Which, I mean, I don't know, it's like a definition of, like, conspiracy is a definition in the US like code, like people go to jail for it. Like, it's a real thing. Our government engages in them, like the Manhattan Project to develop the nuclear bomb. Massive conspiracy, right? Like, massive secret conspiracy. So like, they exist, they're real. But also it's in everyone who is actually engaging in something like that, like, to make it sound like either it's totally implausible or it's totally crazy, right? So like, I was into UFOs. I'm still kind of into UFOs, but they started to freak me out a little bit. But part of the UFO thing is it's in the Air Force and the CIA or the NRO in their best interest to promote kind of a vigorous UFO, like, oh, these are like visitors from, Alpha Centauri, because then you don't think like, oh no, that's actually like that like drone thing that they're flying around that's like nuclear powered that might be kind of dangerous. That's a hypothetical example.
Or
But
it's
like,
the Russian, or that's the other one, is they say we have to put the UFO theory out there because we don't want people thinking that the Russians have technology. If you go back to the 50s and the 60s.
Right. So just kind of that like diverting of like, or like the almost redirecting, like the way you redirect a current, right? Like away from, so you get say the JFK assassination, right? Plenty of weird stuff with that. Like everyone agrees on that, like the House Committee on Assassinations agreed that there's weird stuff with that, right? Like, but is it really in like anyone's best interest to like in the higher reaches of the government to be like, well, I don't know, it's looking more and more like those boys at Langley just got upset with them and took them out using some of their Texas guys, like no one really wants to like say that, it doesn't do anyone any good in America to like make that public. And I'm not saying that's what happened. I'm just saying that's one possibility, but
there's tons of possibilities. Yeah.
I mean, it's weird. And like Lee Harvey's weird, like the whole deal is weird. And it's something too that growing up Mormon, like whenever there was something weird about like, and you would ask a question about it, you'd get like a kind of like, don't ask stuff like that. I'm sure Catholics get the same thing. Or,
I had the same. I was raised in like Baptist and Methodist and that kind of, and there's the version of that in there as well.
Yeah.
As well. Adam and Eve had Cain and Abel. How did they run off and get married if there were only 4 people on earth? Don't ask the questions, just accept it.
Yeah. Just like, and you start to see that same sort of thing where, with just like common day-to-day, like life things, like where you're like, wait, but why am I supposed to accept this as a matter of faith? Like, I don't know,
Yeah. We have so many, we ran into that with COVID, I think, because so many people were like suddenly doing their own, they're like, what we talked about earlier, where it's like, don't ask questions about the mission until the stampede is over. Don't ask any questions. And then we'll figure out it was a snake that scared the bison. But COVID, people are like, you're getting such a weird information. You're getting a lack of information. You're getting conflicting information. You don't know who to trust. People are doing their own research. It's such a perfect storm for people to suddenly go, what the fuck?
And it's selling like the most uniquely American commodity of fear, like the hardest it could possibly be sold, like, I mean, which again, I don't think the media has done a very responsible job of like informing the citizenry without inflaming the citizenry.
The deuce, you say? Never.
Yeah. Hey, also, something I thought of in high school. Did you have a Channel 1 News
for the school?
Yeah.
That came out after. I was in school before that kind of really hit.
Okay, so we had Channel 1 News in Yorktown, Virginia in 1998. The anchor I learned at school after the Pledge of Allegiance and before Spanish class would start, to trust, like the guy that was on the news on Channel 1 was a young, handsome Vanderbilt named Anderson Cooper.
No way.
Swear to God. And then there was also like very smart, very pretty lady named Lisa Ling, and a guy named Chris. Like basically all the people that are on cable news now, or like a bunch of them, started off on Channel 1. And like for me, I'm like, dude, is like Anderson Cooper supposed to be like our like television like spirit guide for the rest of our lives? Like, is that what we're doing here? Like he's gonna be the one we trust until like, until his biceps are not so taut, like
he keeps doing those New Year's specials, man. I don't know if he's gonna I don't know if he's be able to pull it off because what's his
Dude,
name? Andy keeps
did
throwing
you see
out
that New Year's
crazy stuff.
special with the who was that? Like she was a brunette, and she's like little and pretty, and she was like, her name is Lucy, and she was all fucked up. Like she was like on something. Her eyes were like that big.
No, I didn't see that one.
What was her name? Lucy something.
I know Kathy Griffin did it for a while, and she got a story came out the other day. She asked for a raise, and they fired her.
Right.
And that's and then the whole Trump head thing. That's why she eventually lost the gig. But she was like, "I'm doing more work than Anderson. I'm being paid less than him." And they were like, "You're fired." And then they hired her back at a discount, like 20%.
Dude, like that's the other thing is like, I mean, the entertainment industry is like full of horrible people.
It is. I work in it. I know.
Like just like just the business practices on a day-to-day. You're like,
oh
my God.
Yeah.
Like,
Don't.
I had a part of the thing with, there was some interest in like from Hollywood and the Bowe Bergdahl stuff after that. And I did some stuff with like, dude, I like producers, man, I trust them less than I trust CIA people. Like, like, oh my God.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I could tell you stories that would like, even you who is a glass half empty kind of guy, I can tell you stories you would still go, no way.
No, I can believe that. Yeah.
Personal ones. So dude, I'm gonna this has been fun. I'm gonna start wrapping this up. Then I'm glad you got over your Zoom hatred to do
only
this,
for you.
I know you're not a fan. I appreciate that.
This is this is not like breaking the seal. This is just a one-time thing for you.
An aberration.
Yeah, it is.
So the link to your book is going to be in the show notes. Everybody, check that out. Go check out your writing. I'm going to put some links to some of your other stuff.
Tom Clancy too?
Sure, absolutely. Okay. Make sure I'll put that in there too. We'll put all your stuff.
Cool.
So, I appreciate it. Dude, this has been a lot of fun. Thanks for doing this.
Thank you so much for having me.
Comes from the History's Train Wrecks podcast that focuses on stories like a temper tantrum that changed history, the president who promised not to run again and regretted it for the rest of his life, the World War II general who lost his pants on a secret mission in enemy territory. The History's Train Wrecks podcast, available now.
Hey everybody, hope you enjoyed the show. Help us spread the word by subscribing and leaving a review. If you want to support us even more, you can find a link to our Patreon account in the show notes. And if you're one of our diehard fans, head on over to the VikingDogStore.com where you can find official Open Highway merchandise to show your support to the entire world. But most of all, thanks for listening.
For the highways of America, which for so many years were an assortment of as many designs and pavements as there were states, are now becoming one big road that can take you anywhere faster, safer, and more directly than ever before. What is this big road? Where is it going? How much has been built? How much is yet to come? These are questions we ask. Certainly traveling the entire system would be a memorable experience, but few of us have the time for such a trip.
Copyright Viking Dog 2022. All rights reserved. The Open Highway is a trademark of Viking Dog LLC.